Hey guys, it's Rosemary Smith. I'm really excited to say that my website is officially up and running, so you can now actually book 15-minute Zoom calls with me by using that QR code. As I was building my website, I was actually thinking about this YouTube channel. And what I didn't want to happen was over time, I actually start to have some useful nuggets in my videos, but I didn't want someone to fall into this trap of trying to recall a single snippet, but couldn't recall what video it was in. So I've started to build out a resource section on my website there. Right now, it's rather small. I only have a quick checklist for room rentals and a checklist about how someone could work with me. But I think it's important for people to understand, especially the latter. This week, I've been getting quite a few questions from people, other service members that I work with, asking if I could sell their house for them or if I could help them purchase a house. And whenever we get further into the conversation, of course, they reveal that they want to use their VA loan. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to always encourage service members to use their VA loans because you guys earned it. And there's so many benefits to using it. But there are some limitations that I have as an investor because I'm not actually acting as a real estate agent. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and take you guys to the website and go over that handout that talks about what I can and cannot do in the world of real estate. Once you actually come to my homepage here, on the home screen, as you scroll down, these are linked to my calendar if you're looking for my availability. If you really want to gouge your eyeballs out, you're welcome to read about my journey and vision in real estate. But I really want to take some time to talk about what I can provide to a person. I think my bread and butter really comes from this creative deal structuring that a lot of people tend to overlook, as well as just linking people with other folks who have the answer. So, on this note, whenever people are looking for smart places to park their money, but they don't necessarily want to buy a house, I have two connections right now that have guaranteed 12 to 15% annualized returns. So, I was having this conversation with someone at work the other day. If this is your forever home and you don't plan on selling it in the next year or two, why don't you go ahead and pull a HELOC out at 7, 8% and then invest it at 12 to 15%. And then you're doing nothing but just collecting interest on money that's sitting there doing nothing for you. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the resource section and where these handouts will be maintained in the future. And right now, we only have a room rental checklist for someone who wants a recap of our last video. And I have this how can I help PDF. And if you decide to download this PDF, it looks something like this. I'm not going to bore everyone to death. I know everyone hates death by PowerPoint, so I'm not going to read this line by line. But I think it is very important for people to know how I could actually work with them and recognize bullet point number 2. So I will read this one. And it says, I am not a real estate agent and I am not an attorney. Because of that, I do not represent sellers, negotiate on their behalf, or act as an intermediary. I'll explain this a little bit more as we get down to option 2. If you tell someone that you're an investor, it is so important that that investor stays in their lanes. So I made this quick handout to show the 3 ways that I can provide value to a person. The first one, it says transaction guidance, but think about this more so as an apprenticeship program. This is for someone who wants to break into the investing world, but they want full control of the transaction. They want to learn as they take action. I give them tips and cues on what to look out for, what are some red flags, what are some other considerations. We could underwrite deals together. We could do some market analysis together. I'm happy to review your contracts and point out things. Here's something you need to make sure that you add. But at the end of the day, you really should have your documents finalized by an attorney. In most real estate transactions, whether we realize it or not, there's actually usually an escrow attorney involved, especially as deeds are getting filed and promissory notes are getting made. All of that behind the scenes work that we don't really think about, there's an attorney. But at the end of the day, as it says here, I am not acting on their behalf, right? I want to be the A driver to the driver, and I want them to build the confidence to talk with the buyers, the tenants, and other parties involved. Option 2, this is a better fit for someone who wants to be pretty hands-off during the experience, but they have a good lead. In that case, I could step in as a principal. in the transaction. Let's go back to a traditional real estate sale. I have a home and I want to sell it on the market. I'm going to go approach a real estate agent, and that real estate agent can now take pictures of my home. They could market the property on my behalf and allow people to tour it. That real estate agent is acting on my behalf. I cannot do that as an investor. I could only act on my own interest. So in some of the examples that I put down in here, let's go with an example I actually had last year. There was a home. It needed a little bit of work. It wouldn't actually pass a home inspection, but it was worth about $250,000. So I end up getting into an agreement between me and the seller. And I tell the seller, I'm like, hey, what if we put on paper that you're willing to sell it to me at $245,000? But in this paperwork, we're going to put some creative terms in there. So instead of someone getting a $245,000 loan from the bank, which is not going to get approved because it's not going to pass inspection, let's do a seller finance structure. So essentially, the agreement said something along the lines of, I agree to sell my property to Rosemary Smith at $245,000. I want $10,000 up front, and I want the remaining balance financed over the next 30 years at 5%. At that point, I have a document. I have a contract with the seller. And I can now take this contract and market the contract to the end buyer. So now I go and I find this end buyer and I tell them, hey, if you want to step into my position, you could take over this assignment for $5,000. At that point, at the closing table, the buyer actually ends up bringing 15,000 to the table, 5,000 to me, 10,000 to the seller, and then they end up paying the seller finance notes every month directly to the seller. I was a middleman. I was a principal in the transaction because it may sound like a little bit of a nuance, but guys, this is so important to understand where our limitations are. And in this case, at no point am I saying, this is my house. Do you want to buy it? I'm saying, no, I have this contract. Would you like to take my place in the contract? And in this contract, there must be verbiage that says, I have the rights to assign this contract. Another example is very common in our lease option transactions. So I will approach the seller, and the seller says, I agree to lease the property to Rosemary Smith. Rosemary Smith has the ability to sublease the property. Does that start to make a little bit more sense, guys? As you scroll farther down, this is just a ChatGPT generated table to compare the two. I think I've kind of already drilled them quite a bit. And option three is the one where all I do is use my resources to help you out. As it says, not every solution is best solved through me. So whenever those cases arise and you book a call with me, there will be times that I tell you, hey, I think it's best that you actually have an attorney review this. This looks like a slippery slope. Or I'll tell you, hey, you want all of the equity out of your property and it's in great condition. I think you need to go through a real estate agent. I am more than happy to recommend people to you if I know someone. If you are in the DMV, so Northern Virginia, Maryland, DC area, I actually know a real estate agent who will pay service members 25% of their commission. If you want referrals for someone who has clearly defined return structures, this past year I now have two connections that have guaranteed 12 to 15% returns. And then I've already mentioned real estate attorneys as an example. Oh, one more that just came to mind. This past week, if you're a fix and flipper, I met a DSCR lender who actually does negative DSCR ratios, and he approves them regularly. So if you ever want that contact, please reach out to me. I always tell folks to reach out to me directly because I don't want to just put someone's name out here and then down the road they don't become a good resource. In a nutshell, those are the three ways that I can provide value to someone. For your next steps, if you decide that you just want to have a simple conversation, again, it's as simple as going to the home page, clicking one of these blue buttons. Each of these will schedule a 15-minute Zoom call with me, and then we could talk about whatever challenge you have or whatever you want to try to focus on next in real estate or finances. And chances are, if I don't have the answer, I know plenty of people who do, and I'm more than happy to make that introduction. So with that being said, guys, I appreciate you guys taking the time to come to my TED Talk. I will start to make that YouTube video where I go through the different properties. I'm just going to have to stagger when I actually go through each room because I know last video I promised that I would, and there hasn't been a day where we have had enough vacancies or turnovers between all the rooms for me to actually go through a whole house. So in one sense, it's great that business is still booming, but in one sense, it's actually bad that I didn't keep my promise. So until next time, guys, y'all take care.